Welcome to the Q&A with the Noble 24th. Today, we have here the regimental sutler, Laura Lunde. Thank you for being here today and doing this quick little interview. So we're just going to get right into the questions. Starting with the first one, out of all of the hobbies, why'd you choose reenacting?
Well, I have to say that reenacting is not my only hobby. There are a lot of things I do that I enjoy doing. I enjoy my music. I enjoy cooking. I like reading. The interesting thing about reenacting is I think I can combine all of my interests in that, so that as part of my reenacting persona and part of what I do is I do lead a tavern, so I get to sing and talk to people. I get to cook. So I think it combines a lot of different interests. I get to use it as a creative outlook. I get to do it with my family. So I honestly think that it's not that out of all the different possibilities that I could have had as a hobby, I think reenacting is a chance for me to combine a lot of my different interests.
And now putting all those interests into one thing, which as you said is reenacting, what is it about this particular period, the Revolutionary War, that really gets your interest?
Well, I've said this before when I talk to people about this particular time period, and it's not so much as a female perspective that it's the war part, but I find the 18th century, particularly the late 18th century, from a social history perspective, very interesting. And it is one of the times in history where women actually had a very significant role, particularly in France, not as much in England and Scotland. But women had a standing and rights in the late 18th century that they really didn't achieve again until probably the late 20th century. Yeah, they didn't have the right to vote, but they were influential and they ran businesses and they did a lot of things. And in particular, I think the late 18th century, like some other time periods, like the 1960s, like the late 14th century, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of change. There was a lot of interesting historic, I don't want to say historical, social changes where with regard to the way that people interacted and thought about themselves. It was sort of the apex of the age of enlightenment. So you saw that people were starting to think about themselves and their role in the world differently. And I think all of those things come to play when you start talking about the late 18th century, changes in politics, changes in philosophy and in science. So I think for myself anyways, the late 18th century is a very interesting time period without regard to the American Revolution. I will say that the so-called American Revolution and then the French Revolution afterward and all of these things were, I think, symptoms of the growing pains and the changes of the way that people thought about themselves and their place in the world. So I think that's one of the reasons I like the 18th century much more than, say, the 19th century that people are drawn to when they think about, oh, Victorian, I want to reenact that or something. No, I think the 18th century is a much more interesting time period.
Okay. But going back to reenacting as a whole, would you consider this a hobby or would you consider it a lifestyle?
Well, I have often said to people, if you're going to get into reenacting, it does become almost a lifestyle, because if you want to do it well, you do start to find yourself going down the path of doing more research and buying more stuff and getting to know more people. So I think, like many really good hobbies, it does become almost a lifestyle in that you start to take on a lot more in your personal life as related to this. So as an example, let's say you decide your hobby is going to be fly fishing. Well, I'm going to go fly fishing. Well, before you know it, you're spending $1,000 on hand-tied flies, and you're jetting off to Scotland and all the rest of this. So it is a lifestyle, but in the sense that it becomes something that you can carry with you and something that you can use in your free time to guide you in other things. So as an example, you may be on vacation in Newport, Rhode Island, but as a reenactor, you may think, oh, I want to go see this historical place as well, because that's, an interesting part of what else I do, So it does give you an opportunity to buy new stuff and learn new things. I hate to discourage people from the hobby by saying it's a lifestyle and you're going to just become committed to it. But I do think it becomes the kind of thing that starts to permeate a lot of other things you do. So it is not simply, well, I paint pottery. It is more than that. It's much more in depth and much more absorbing. So.
And why did you choose the 24th specifically?
Well, because my husband was in the 24th. So
Good answer.
That's why I chose it. When Paul Novotny started the unit, he was looking for new members, and he had a flyer up, and Glenn was probably the first person outside of the family, outside of Lynn, who joined up. And of course, Paul started it because it was in the area. The 24th was in the Saratoga area, and Glenn joined up. And at the time, you know, our sons were very little, and Paul, your dad, had said to me, "Oh, don't you want to join?" And I said, you know, I'm not carrying diapers and babies to reenactments, but let's see how it goes. And after Glenn spent the first year in it, and I saw that the kids really liked it. They just thought it was fascinating, and I thought it was interesting. That I said, yeah, okay, I will join next year. Just, you know, be careful what you wish for, Paul, because now you're going to take me on, and I can be a bossy pants, and I can be a lot of work, but I've had a good time with it. So,
Well, that's good to hear. So what would you say be the best thing about this hobby then to you?
I would have to say the people. I would honestly have to say the people. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that so many people are so interesting and just so cool, I would find most of it sometimes a challenge. But you go, and every event, I used to say, was like if you followed the Grateful Dead back in the day. You know, you went to every Grateful Dead concert, and you saw the same people every week, whatever the concert was, and you all hugged and you shared stories, and it really is the people, I think, that make it worthwhile.
But now, as with everything, you know, there are things that might just get a little bit under your skin, things that aren't, they're not necessarily deal breakers per se, but they are a bit kind of annoying. What would you say is a pet peeve that you have about this hobby?
It's not a pet peeve, but it's the thing I find most difficult to some extent is a less than interesting event. And how do I explain that? You know, sometimes it's a cold, rainy April day, and you just have to go. Or it's super hot, and it's just, you know, the infrastructure is not there, and the toilets are backed up, and just like, oh man. So the analogy I use, because I'm you know, I play in a couple of orchestras, is to have a really great concert, we all have to go to the rehearsals. And sometimes you have to sit there in rehearsal. And I know you're a violin player, Grant, so I don't mean to pick on you, but sometimes you have to sit there in rehearsals and listen to the second violins just banging out this horrible version of their bowing, which is a disaster. And you're like, why am I sitting here? You just have to go so that the good parts are really good. So there have been plenty of events, and like I said, it usually has to do with the infrastructure, where it's just too hot, or it's just the toilets are backed up, or, you know, we don't have water, or we're too crowded. It's infrastructure at a bad event that I find difficult sometimes. But, you know, again, sometimes you have to put up with it. You take the difficult with a grain of salt to make the good really good. So there have been times at certain events, and they, again, stick in my mind, where you guys have been off at the battle or whatever you're doing, and I have been standing in the rain going, why is this fun? And I'm trying to get dinner made, and it's just, I'm freezing, and the fire won't go, and I'm just, why is this fun? But, you know, come back next year, and I've been doing this for 25 years, so it must be fun.
And so, you know, speaking of all this infrastructure about events and all this, what event sticks in your mind as being one of the best ones? It could be an annual event, it could be one specific event, just whatever you feel.
You know, again, the gold standard is always our 225th of Saratoga, and that was hard. That was hard because I was in grad school, and it was raining, and I had a lot to do, but that was a hell of a thing. I mean, that really came together, and it was just gorgeous and just beautiful. I do still like going up to Ticonderoga. I think a couple of reasons, because it's a historical site, because we get just the right mix of people, you know, because it's not too far from my house. It's a nice time of year.
Mhm.
I do still love going up to Ticonderoga. So those are the ones that stick in my mind, really. Like I said, for the end all and be all was absolutely the 225th of Saratoga when we did that. But as for an annual event, I like doing Ticonderoga every year.
And now, as you've already mentioned, you do cook for us. You are also, in addition to being the regimental sutler, our tavern mistress. So out of all of the meals that you cook, what would you say is the one that is your favorite?
Well, I guess I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. If you say, you know, historically, which meal was it like, man, that was awesome, or what do I like to do? I mean, you have to be a little more specific.
What do you like to do?
You know, there are certain things which are hard. but that doesn't mean I don't like to do them. And usually once a year, I, as you know, I will do prime rib over the open fire, and it just comes out perfectly. On a nice day and everybody's there, I'll do a special prime rib dinner. And prime rib on a spit over the fire is the only way to cook prime rib. It takes all afternoon and it cooks slowly, and the outside gets nice and crispy and salty, and the inside's a perfect medium rare. Prime rib on the open fire is the best way to go. I know you guys all like it when I do the fried dough in the morning. That's always fun because, again, cooking fried dough over cast iron is a really good way to do it because the cast iron keeps in the heat. Yeah, you don't worry about spattering and all the smell of the oil in the house, so that always comes out really nice. I got to say, there are times when it's hot and it's like, man, I do not want to stand over that fire. So lunch is chicken salad and apples. But yeah, I got to say, I do like doing the prime rib.
The prime rib. And now, as a last question, what is your advice for someone who is just getting into the hobby?
My advice is not to allow yourself to be overwhelmed. If you think it's something that you might be interested in, you are free to stick a toe in the water. You want to give it a try, we will find you clothes, we will find you a gun to borrow, we will find you people to support you. You don't have to be, just flung into the deep end and hope for the best. You want to, not sure you want to stay at a hotel or you want to stay in camp. Don't worry too much about it. We're not going to judge you about that, but I guess my advice would be to just stick your toe in the water and see if you like it. I will say that most people, when they try it, realize, wow, this is really super fun. You can be overwhelmed with the amount of money you could spend, but you don't have to. You could be not the kind of person who wants to camp on the ground. I talked to a lot of women who are like, I can't possibly do this. I can't sleep on the ground. There are bugs, and I have to have my makeup, and I have to have my shower. No, you don't. You'd be surprised. It's very immersive. People are very forgiving, and we want to help you. So I would say just give it a shot, and don't think that you have to buy everything today. We can find you stuff to borrow, so you can give it a try and see if you like it.
Okay. And as a quick little bonus question, do you have a favorite color?
Yes, my favorite color is burgundy.
All right. Well, thank you again, Miss Lunde, for being here and doing this quick little thing. As always, if you're interested in joining the 24th, we do have information from a website to a Facebook page. We have lots of stuff out there where you can find us. But until then, we will see you out in the fields.